Hi, this is the Art of Transformation, and I'm Wendy Yellen. Today we're going to talk about how childhood trauma affects your daily life. And I'm going to talk about traumas that are ones you may be thinking of as trauma and ones that perhaps you don't. And also from a very, very hopeful place, because I know experiencing trauma and having the effects in your life right now can be devastating and excruciating. Before I go on, though, if you would like to be notified as soon as we have new videos up, and we're putting out about one a week, then please hit like and subscribe and you'll be notified. And thank you very much. It really helps. I'm going to assume that you're here because you suspect or you know that there has been some trauma in your life and you're concerned about it, and you're concerned about the way that it's affecting your life right now. It may have been a single trauma like an injury or an accident or the death of someone or the loss of someone early on. It could have been what they call ACEs these days, adverse childhood experiences, or it could have been a continuous, for example, emotional abuse trauma or emotional trauma that you suspect may be showing up. The results may be showing up in your life right now. So I want you to really hear that though these can be so devastating, in fact, so much good can come for you from working with the trauma and from mining it, believe it or not, mining it for excavating the parts of you that were buried under these traumas but are still there, even though it may not feel like they are. So some of your best parts, so to speak, trust, hope, maybe faith, ability to respond, and more resiliency, more confidence, all of those things can get buried in the avalanche of a trauma, but they can come back. They are still there, and you can regain access to them, for certainly with Eidetics, which is the work that I do. What happens is that a trauma, first of all, let me give you some statistics because they're horrifying, but it might help you to know that you're not alone. People who have experienced childhood trauma are 15 times more likely to attempt suicide, 4 times more likely to become an alcoholic, 3 times more likely to experience depression, 3 times more likely to have serious job problems, 2 times more likely to have serious financial problems. And the research with ACE, the adverse childhood experiences, shows that your health, your physical health, can be really compromised, and that 61% of adults surveyed across 25 states reported that they had at least one type of adverse child experience, and nearly 1 in 6 reported that they had 4 or more types of adverse childhood experiences. Having an ACE, an adverse childhood experience, or preventing it, could potentially reduce a large number of health conditions. For example, up to 1.9 million cases of heart disease and 21 million cases of depression could have been potentially avoided by preventing adverse childhood experiences. So we're talking about something really important to your physical, mental, emotional, and even your spiritual health. These traumas could be something like neglect or poverty or cruelty. They can happen back in your past, or they can even be happening now. When I've certainly worked with people with accident trauma, And it's a discrete one-time occurrence, and there are absolutely ways that those can be worked with. More frequently, what my clients come to me about is some sort of chronic, low-level or high-level emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, or more insidiously, because it's harder to put your hands on, is back to the emotional abuse. And or emotional neglect or emotional scars. So let's widen it from abuse. And I'm going to talk to you about a specific person, actually a podcaster named Jared, who invited me to be a guest on his show and to do an experience of Eidetics with him. And I hope that you'll find something to relate to in this story. So Jared wanted his podcast to be successful. Of course, you probably have something you want to be successful at too. And for him, he found that when he would write the emails to his listeners or do other kinds of communications with them, he didn't feel like there was a connection between him and his people. And this troubled him a great deal. It's interesting that he could actually feel it and was concerned about it. And so it made the writing, when he would do it, dry and kind of pointless for him. And now I'm extrapolating from what he said to what I would assume. But for sure, he was having trouble feeling like he could connect. Now, if somebody's doing something and they're not connecting to you, on some level you can feel it. Even if you don't recognize it, you're feeling it. There feels like a distance. So it was a problem for him. We did an image called the house image live on the podcast. And I'll show you a way to have your own experience with this later at the end. In this house image, he saw Eidetics isn't about memories, and it's about what you're actually seeing when you're given an instruction. And when he was told just simply to see his house and see his parents, where are they and what are they doing, what he began to see was a scene where his father was completely disconnected from him, and it made him feel alone and isolated and like he wanted to disappear. And like he wasn't present. And these were the exact feelings that he feels when he writes the email. So you can see that his past experience of feeling disconnected from his father in this case, and this would happen over and over, but it was the first scene that came up in the image that he saw, which was he was not controlling, it just came. You can see that experience back then is now his current experience in life, in a very important part of his business, which is communicating with his audience. So let's put that aside for a second. Where are you noticing a difficulty in your present that, even if you just think back about traumatic experiences in your past, is similar to how you felt in those traumatic experiences? There's usually a very clear connection. And if you don't see it right away, it usually comes after a short time. We're very much affected by these traumas, as you saw in what happens to someone's health, physical health from these traumas, including, of course, the heart, which is an organ, but it also senses and has a lot of emotions. A broken heart, for example, that's how we talk about it. When we worked on the podcast with Jared, we worked with an image that I'll give you a way to have later at the end, like I said. And in that image, he was able to literally come forward and connect with his father, not imagining that this might have been a good thing, not wishing and wanting, but actually viscerally, physically, emotionally experiencing that connection with his father now, just as if it had happened in the past, as real as if it were happening and had happened many times in the past. And this gave him such a sense of confidence and connection and clarity and grounding in himself. And we used it then experientially with writing the emails, and he felt so much more delight and connection with his people, which is exactly what he wanted. So even in the very artificial situation of a podcast where he's under pressure to experience something and I'm under pressure to help him experience something, even with that, he was able to have an experience of himself differently that not only helped to begin to resolve a very long, ongoing situation, but even better, gave him reconnection and contact with the part of himself that had gotten cut off and crushed by the lack of sense of connection with his father. Now, if he were a client, we would keep working with that image and images that were for him to continue to recreate and reconnect and widen, open up those neural pathways so that he would have a clear and easy access, a natural access to himself. This is what I really want you to hear, the hope that is within yourself, the hope that is within you, that is a direct result of your traumas. They're not simply something to get over. They're not simply something to forgive someone about. They're not something that you should just forget and go on, because inside of them is buried or covered over these wonderful parts of you that you're probably chomping at the bit to feel again, if you even still have the hope that you can. So if you take nothing away from this podcast, but if you take nothing away from this vlog except that, please take that home. Let me give you a suggestion for an action you can take. So first, make a list of some childhood traumas that you experienced. And next to each one, list the main feeling you had or you have about that trauma. The trauma first, and then the main feeling you have about it. And I have forgiven them is not a feeling. Really dig deep, find out what the feeling is. Or it's not really important right now. If you're writing it down, most likely it is. So dig a little deeper, because our own insistent blindness to what is running the show inside of us can be the biggest block to transformation. So once you've made that list, then make a list of 3 ways of being or feelings that you often have right now. Like for Jared, it was a lack of connection or lack of confidence and kind of hopelessness. What are 3 ways that you have right now? And then what you want to do is look for similarities between the feelings you're having now and the feelings you had with those traumas. If you do this completely, you will find definite connections if you don't already know them. And again, as I said, I love working with traumas, because although there can be horrifying and excruciatingly painful, the actual work is hopeful and alive and filled with the juice of being a full person now. It's extraordinary. So if that's something that you want to consider for yourself, and if you want to have your own experience with an eidetic image, and if you're thinking about potentially working with me with Eidetics, then here's a way to have an experience and find out more. So go to www.measiwanttobe.com, just like it sounds. And there you will find a video of me walking you through an eidetic experience, the same one, very similar one that I gave to Jared. You'll have your experience, and then after the experience, there's a preparation form to fill out if you'd like to have a complimentary conversation together about working with on the trauma and on whatever you want to work with for expansion in your life. There's a preparation form and a calendar where you can book yourself a complimentary call with me. And when we get on the call, then it'll be a Zoom call. When we get on the call, then I'll also work a little bit with that video, with that image after I've heard more about what you want. So you'll have a little bit of a deepening experience. And then you and I can talk about what I would see as a plan for you to regain those parts of yourself that you feel like you've lost. It's all on measiwanttobe.com, and the link is right here for you too. I hope you received hope from our conversation here, and I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now.